Hello, everyone. This is Chase Pounds. Welcome to my channel. Happy Black History Month. As marking the occasion, since my previous video I had discussed MLK's interracial relationship. For this video, I'm going to explore Malcolm X's interracial relationship. Compared to now, while I was trying to research information, do research for my story, I couldn't find as much information. I mean, there's information that exists, but it's not as thorough compared to King's interracial relationship, even though it's not exactly as known either. But there's not so much information regarding like details about it. It's kind of conflicting on different articles I read. It varies. The lady in question, Malcolm X was in a relationship, was a lady by the name of Beatrice Caldonian Brazanian. It's kind of a difficult name to pronounce. She went by several different nicknames. Nicknames that Malcolm X named her. She was known as either Sophia. Sometimes she was short for B, or even Betty. Similar nickname for Martin Luther King's girlfriend. Malcolm X at the time was referred to as Malcolm Little. He wasn't known as Malcolm X. He was known as Malcolm Little, and sometimes he was given nicknames such as Big Red or Big Red of Detroit, because most famous, his hair was kind of reddish colored. Much of this information about his relationship is mostly referenced in his autobiography. And at the time, and this was long before Malcolm was. It was like early in Malcolm X's youth, and this was before his long before his infamous prison sentence that changed him and converted, and where he converted to the Nation of Islam. It was said that Malcolm X met Sophia or Beatrice at a social dance ball in Boston, and that from that point on, the relation the relationship grew. It's kind of conflicting. Some people say it was that Sophia had deep had respect and had deep love for Malcolm, though this may have been so. But most of the articles I read are kind of conflicting, as making it sound like that the relationship was more of a status statement, a status symbol, symbol, though. And this is in the autobiography that this is stated stated it's even there's even there was even like little information saying that and this was mostly what I was googling and this little information bits of like short facts and details come up, and it mentions that it was just a status symbol, like a showing status symbol was more of a more based on transactions and at times was a little abusive, but there was no much. But many articles I read didn't make no claims of any abuse. There was nothing really supporting this, like stories of abuse. But I don't know where this came from. But that was abusive. But in Malcolm X's autobiography mentions that they would often meet in the inner city of the ghetto of Harlem, and he would often take her to many of the nightclubs and bars in the area, and he would sometimes flaunt her and parade her in the among his peers and buddies, and according to Malcolm, interesting thing, he said that it failed when he was in a relationship with Sophia Beatrice. He said he had a sense of self-worth, maturity, and sense of worth value compared to prior to when he wasn't, compared to his relationship to Beatrice or Sophia. He felt like just any ordinary Negro, as he put it, it's just like just as another Negro in a with combed hair and a zoot suit, which the combed hair back then was a fad, a trend among black men at the time. It was like it was like a process of relaxing their hair, mostly with lye, like a mixture of chemicals, and when applied, it could be painful at times, but it would straighten your hair, kind of made it almost neat, straight, almost like white people's hair. And this is mostly prominent among celebrities, particularly musicians like rock and roll singers, R&B singers at the time, such as Little Richard and Chuck Berry and James Brown. And in the process, it's kind of depicted in the Spike Lee movie Malcolm X, where it's kind of a funny scene where his hair is burning and the water shut off, and he has to wash his hair rinse his hair in the toilet or something like that. I think that happens. But that was a style of hair back during that era, and the zoot suit was also a baggy suit that was popular trend at that time, 1940s. To Malcolm, it made him feel a sense of, I guess, superiority, self-worth for a black man at the time, which during that period it was kind of unheard of. I wouldn't say unheard of, but it just wasn't common. It just wasn't a prevalent common thing in a racial marriage, especially between a black man and a white woman. And even though Malcolm lived in the North, the Jim Crow free North, it was still frowned upon, looked upon, or resented by white most white Americans at the time. And this could also even result in cases of harassment, intimidation, violence, incarceration. Your very life was could be at stake. Despite this, even and which is very well the same case with Martin Luther King's relationship, even though he was when he went to school in Pennsylvania, which was also Jim Crow free, it still was met by the same issues. But despite the many, you did have a lot of notable black figures and celebrities that were that interracially dated or married, such as you had Frederick Douglass, who later in his life married a white lady. You had the heavyweight boxer Jack Johnson. He dated several white women. Most famously, that comes to mind, you had the LaRocha family, who booked passage and was the only mixed race couple to book passage on the ill-fated RMS Titanic. And then you had the controversial actor Stephen Fetchit. He dated, I think, a white lady too. So you did have, during much of the early mid-Jim Crow period, you did have some people that did date who did take a chance in a interracial marriage and dating, but it was still uncommon. Wasn't a very common thing. It was still considered taboo, and unlike today, where it's nothing is very common, just as gay marriage is starting to become just as common as well. But it was kind of a novelty at that time. His relationship between Sophia and relationship between Malcolm and Sophia lasted between 1941 up to 1946. Sometimes she was involved in some of Malcolm's criminal activity, activities. As in 1946, Malcolm was caught and convicted of burglary, and both him and Sophia were sentenced to jail. Sophia, on the other hand, was I think a lighter sentence. I think she was just in prison from February 1946 to from February 1946 to September 1946 of that year. Unlike most cases at the time, usually when a white woman was on trial, testifying against a black person, usually they were often pressured by the police to swear that she was harmed or raped, and which a lot of times these accusations will often lead to lynchings and race riots, such as the Tulsa race riot and the murder of Amy Tilden decades later. But a decade later, but Sophia would as said in the article, wasn't having it, and she wasn't the play it's the same system of game because she supposedly had affection and admiration for Malcolm. Though other variations are kind of conflicting. Some said she did portray him and testify against him and made some false accusations. Which I think it is depicted in Spike Lee. But after they were both convicted, both Sophia and Malcolm stopped seeing each other from that point on. And of course, with the case of Malcolm, he during his time in prison, he became invested in studying the Nation of Islam, and he converted to the Nation of Islam, and that changed his whole perspective in thinking of society and the white people, and it seen them as more corrupt, and is the pressing factor of America, the harm or danger to black society, and he believed in black supremacy. And see, with this, he stopped. He more than likely would have cut ties with Sophia in his secular life, much of the rest of his secular lifestyle. And for Sophia, it's been speculated, but only speculated, it's not known, that she may have saw Malcolm on TV, giving his or heard on the radio of his lectures and in his speeches. We can't know how she would have felt about his rhetoric and his polarizing views on white Americans, as how he referred to them as the white devils. I'm not sure that would have offended or angered her. It's even been said that it's no question or speculation. Too many articles that said that she could have actually appeared at some of his lectures and speeches in the background, but it's not really certain. It's only speculation. We're not able to know for sure if how she reacted to Malcolm X's assassination, as well as attending any of his funeral services. It's not ever known if she about what she thought about the autobiography of Malcolm X, or even years later of the Spike Lee movie, on Malcolm X, which, and also, or having any contact or with both Spike Lee or the actors who played Beatrice in the film version, which is really what comes to mind when I think of interracial relationship is the film. And I think it's the only movie that really depicts his depict the relationship. Sophia, for the most part, would go on to become a tango dancer, and she would have a pretty much typical, I guess kind of I don't know how this right words are saying it, kind of a typical temple of life, and she would be married to Martin Bazanium, and which he would die in 1999. And she would continue to live a virtuous life at the age of 92. And she would die on June of 2012, about 92 years old. So she was born in 1922. So by 2022, she would have been 100. So she would have, by 2012, she would have been about 90 years old. So that sounds about right. And that's a story. For the most part, like I said, there isn't that much information about. I mean, it's information, but it's not a lot of detailed information about the relationship. And it's kind of hard to kind of contemplate and think that Malcolm X had an interracial relationship. Knowing who Malcolm X is, though, as I said before, this was before his transition, his conversion to the nation of Islam. So he was a different person at the time. But still it's kind of knowing how. No, still it's kind of hard placing that with his views in his racial views. He was knowing how he believed that the white society was the harm to a danger and destruction to the black community, and despised. How much he despised in many of his speeches. But it's kind of like a lesser known fact just as with MLK's interracial relationship. Again, what mostly comes to mind to me is mostly what I see in the film app, the Spike Lee film. But it's interesting to learn that. That's all I have to say on the subject. I tend to plan on discussing more for the rest of Black History Month. I plan on trying to do a few more Black History subjects I can try and squeeze in. And so this is another video by Chase Pounds. Feel free to comment on the subject. And I'll see you. Stay tuned and see my next video. Stay tuned for my next videos with me.